two sisters rose from the ashes of their father's betrayals to rule a kingdom that never wanted a woman on the throne. One became feared, the other adored. Yet their true story is far more explosive than the legends that survived them. Sisters born into turmoil. At first glance, Mary Tudor and Elizabeth Tudor could not have been more different. One was a devout Catholic shaped by Spanish tradition, the other a sharp-minded Protestant raised in the shifting landscape of the English Reformation. Yet both sisters were daughters of Henry VIII, born into a world suspicious of powerful women, and destined to rule a nation that doubted their capability from the very beginning. Tudor England was an era defined by patriarchy, political manipulation, and religious chaos, and both Mary and Elizabeth had to survive a father who repeatedly changed the rules of the game they were forced to play. Mary's privileged childhood, until everything collapsed. Mary was born in 1516 to Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish princess raised by the formidable Isabella of Castile. Catherine made sure Mary received an education worthy of a future queen. She learned Latin, music, theology, arithmetic, and courtly skills. Henry VIII adored her in childhood, proudly showing off her intelligence and accomplishments. But all of this affection vanished the moment Mary failed to be born a boy. Henry's desperation for a male heir grew with each miscarriage Catherine suffered, and eventually he fixed his hopes on Anne Boleyn. This obsession tore Mary's world apart. Henry demanded the Pope annul his marriage. When the church refused, he created his own Church of England, declared Mary illegitimate, and banished her from her mother's side. Mary, once a cherished princess, was reduced to a lady-in-waiting to her infant half-sister Elizabeth. Catherine died alone, forbidden from seeing Mary, a wound that shaped Mary's lifelong loyalty to Catholicism and her distrust of her father's decisions. Elizabeth's early life in the shadow of danger? Elizabeth entered the world in 1533, hailed at first as Henry and Anne Boleyn's hope for future heirs. Her joy was short-lived. When Anne fell from favor, accused of adultery and treason, Elizabeth too was stripped of her status and declared illegitimate. Like Mary before her, she grew up with the knowledge that her father could destroy any woman who displeased him. Elizabeth's youth forced her to become cautious, observant, and politically aware. Living under the roof of Catherine Parr, Henry's last wife, she endured the inappropriate attention of Thomas Seymour, an experience that taught her how dangerous visibility could be for a young princess. From an early age, Elizabeth learned the art of guarded self-control, a skill she would later use to rule one of England's most turbulent eras. Edward VI, a brother who changed their fates. The birth of Edward VI in 1537 shifted everything. With a legitimate male heir at last, both Mary and Elizabeth drifted into the background. Henry's death in 1547 placed the boy king on the throne, but real power fell into the hands of Protestant nobles who governed in his name. Edward himself embraced Protestantism enthusiastically, and his government clashed repeatedly with Mary, who refused to abandon the Catholic Mass. Elizabeth, far more diplomatic, remained quiet and careful, understanding that survival depended on staying useful but unobtrusive. An attempted coup and Mary's triumph. When Edward fell mortally ill in 1553, he feared Mary would undo his Protestant reforms. In a desperate move, he attempted to rewrite the succession, naming his young Protestant cousin Lady Jane Grey as queen instead of his sisters. But Mary acted swiftly. Warned that she was about to be arrested, she fled to East Anglia, rallied thousands of supporters, and declared her rightful claim to the throne. The people, eager for stability and loyal to Henry VIII bloodline, turned against the plotters. Lady Jane Grey's 9-day reign collapsed almost instantly. Mary marched into London in a blaze of celebration. With Elizabeth beside her, both sisters riding through cheering crowds, Mary Tudor had become the first woman to be crowned Queen of England in her own right. Mary won. A queen with a mission. From the moment she took the throne, Mary's priority was restoring the Catholic faith. She ordered the Mass back into churches, welcomed exiled priests, and reconnected England with Rome. To secure a lasting Catholic dynasty, she needed a Catholic husband and an heir. She chose Prince Philip of Spain, heir to one of the greatest dynasties in Europe. But many in England saw the marriage as a threat, fearing their country would be swallowed by Spanish influence. The rebellion led by Thomas Wyatt erupted in protest, and suspicion fell heavily on Elizabeth once again. She was dragged to the Tower of London, imprisoned in the same rooms where her mother had awaited execution. Mary nearly signed her death warrant, but at the last moment hesitated, whether from mercy, guilt, or political caution. Elizabeth was eventually released, but she never forgot how close she had come to death. The shadow of the fires. Mary believed completely in the righteousness of restoring Catholicism, and when Protestants resisted, she revived the harsh heresy laws. Over 280 people were burned at the stake. Executions were common across Europe for religious crimes, but Mary's brief reign concentrated these burnings into a short span, making them memorable and shocking to contemporaries. Later, Protestant writers would immortalize her as Bloody Mary, a label that overshadowed all other aspects of her rule. Yet Mary saw herself not as cruel, but as a protector of souls, convinced she had a duty to eliminate heresy for the salvation of England. A phantom pregnancy and a broken heart. In 1554, Mary believed she was pregnant, and for months the entire court waited for England's long-awaited Catholic heir. But the child never came. What seemed like pregnancy was likely a symptom of the illness that would soon claim her life. When her condition became undeniable, Mary had to face public humiliation, a devastated court, and a disillusioned husband. Philip left England soon afterward, returning only briefly and with little affection. The collapse of Mary's dream, a Catholic child to secure her legacy, broke her emotionally and politically. As her health deteriorated, support shifted visibly toward Elizabeth. Mary watched her own influence fade as courtiers drifted toward the sister destined to replace her. The end of Mary's reign. By 1558, Mary was physically failing and politically isolated. England was again at odds with Rome, her marriage was loveless, and she had no heir. She saw clearly that Elizabeth would succeed her, and despite the pain of their complicated relationship, she accepted it. Mary died on November 17, 1558, at the age of 42. Her reign, though short, had been intense, deeply principled, and often tragic. Elizabeth I, inheriting the storm. Elizabeth ascended the throne with remarkable composure. Her reign would become one of the most celebrated in English history. She refused marriage proposals, including from Philip of Spain, and carefully crafted the image of the Virgin Queen, a ruler wedded only to her kingdom. Under her leadership came the defeat of the Spanish Armada, the flourishing of English drama, and the rise of figures like Shakespeare and Marlowe. But the foundation for many of her successes had been laid by Mary. Mary had strengthened the navy Elizabeth later used against Spain. Mary had passed laws granting queens the same authority as kings, smoothing Elizabeth's path to power. And Mary had shown England, for the first time, that a woman could rule with legitimacy and authority. 2 queens, 1 legacy. When Elizabeth died childless in 1603, the Tudor dynasty ended. Mary and Elizabeth were eventually laid side by side in Westminster Abbey, united in death after a lifetime of conflict, resilience, and mutual influence. Although history often pits them against each other, their stories are deeply intertwined. Both endured humiliation, political danger, and betrayal from the same father. Both survived turbulent eras shaped by unpredictable men, and both proved in their own ways that a woman could rule England with strength and sovereignty. Without Mary and Elizabeth, the future acceptance of queens like Victoria and Elizabeth II would have been unimaginable. Their triumphs and failures carved a path for every woman who came after them, leaving behind a legacy that reshaped the monarchy and the nation forever. As we close the final chapter on these 2 extraordinary queens, remember this: Mary and Elizabeth didn't just inherit a crown, they rewrote the meaning of power itself. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story behind their lives, make sure to tap like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more hidden histories and untold legends. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life.